This week on The Watchman, they fought bravely against Saddam Hussein, communism, and ISIS. Now Iraq's Kurds face new threats in the world's most dangerous neighborhood.
The Iranian regime and its militias are a real serious threat to not only us, but for the entire region and the international community as well. And they should be stopped.
We're on the ground in Iraqi Kurdistan for an up-close look at the history and heroism of one of America's top allies in the Middle East. Get the inside story this week, only right here on The Watchman. And welcome to The Watchman. When you hear the name Jerusalem, what do you think of? For me, King David, King Solomon, the prophets, the Maccabees, and of course, Jesus all come to mind right away. Jerusalem is the place where God says He has written His name forever, and He's given it to Israel as its one and only capital city. It sounds like a pretty open and shut case, yet it seems that Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan did not get the memo. He recently gave a speech to the Turkish parliament in which he said that, quote, Jerusalem is our city, a city from us. By us, he means the Turks. Now, first, this may come as a big surprise to every Jew who's lived in Jerusalem for the past 3,000 years. Second, Erdogan is apparently referring to a 400-year period when Jerusalem was indeed under the rule of the Ottoman Turks who had conquered the city. During those 4 centuries, Jerusalem fell into a state of complete disrepair and only recovered when the Jewish people miraculously returned to their ancestral homeland and united their ancient capital city. Now, you're probably not hearing about this in the mainstream media, so why does this matter? Because Turkey is a NATO member and supposedly an ally of the West. Yet under Erdogan's radical rule, Turkey has become anti-West, anti-Israel, and is making dangerous moves throughout the Middle East. Whether in Syria, Libya, the Mediterranean, or the ongoing conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan, Erdogan is getting involved and projecting Turkish power. Iraqi Kurdistan is another spot where he has turned his attention. Now, Iraq's Kurds live smack dab in the middle of the world's most dangerous neighborhood and have suffered horrible persecution from the likes of Saddam Hussein and ISIS over the years. But these fierce fighters are pro-American and have a history of tolerance that's very rare in the broader Muslim world. Our Watchman team traveled to Iraqi Kurdistan to get a closer look. We start at a fascinating site where it's believed that a church, a mosque, and a synagogue once stood side by side some 150 years ago. Take a look. Let's talk about the region. Let's talk about where we are right now. A great example of the tolerance of Kurdistan is right behind us are the remains of an ancient synagogue. Talk about the history of this region, the history of tolerance here, and the history of freedom.
Every people has their own traditions and old beliefs and many sacred things that they are proud of. You have come here from a long distance and left your country behind to come to a mountainous area, to a very small village, a small town called Barzan. It is a very small village, a small town, but it has a big philosophy. The Barzan region is part of our culture. In all of Kurdistan, a great part of our culture is that we have coexistence and tolerance, and all different religions living peacefully together. Jews, Muslims, and Christians had been living peacefully for centuries.
We see the ancient remains of a synagogue, mosque, and church right next to each other here in Iraqi Kurdistan. And that's one of the reasons that the Kurdish people said, hey, we need our own nation here in Kurdistan.
In our view, there is no difference between all of mankind and between all the different communities, whether religious or ethnic groups. And the top priority is humanity and serving humanity. There is no differences whether you are Muslim or Christian or any other religion when it comes to serving humanity. We do believe that God created us to be free, and it is our legitimate right to be free. Today I am proud to be a member of this region and the Barzan region. In the Barzani idea, there is an umbrella to protect the sacred between the mosque and the synagogue, and also the church as well, with no differences.
I look throughout history, Halat, and I see whether it's been communists, Saddam Hussein, ISIS, now the Iranian regime and those Shia militias, the Peshmerga and the Kurdish people have always stood on the front lines against these radical forces.
According to our history, it is true that they are able to kill us. They committed many crimes against our nation, but they could never change our belief, our determination, and they could never destroy our path.
We're going to talk particularly about a genocide perpetrated by Saddam Hussein against the Kurdish people here. Let's go now and you can show us the memorial to the victims of that awful genocide carried out by Saddam Hussein. These are stunning images. You mentioned the genocide carried out by Saddam Hussein's regime against the Kurdish people here in Iraqi Kurdistan. Tell us a bit about what we're seeing right now and what this memorializes.
بريورك رجيم بعث خلق إيرهات ترحيل كرن بو جنوب عراق الديوانية هوفيت الصحرايا.
But the Ba'ath regime moved all of the villagers and innocent people to the south of Iraq in concentration camps.
So Saddam Hussein's Ba'ath regime displaced the Kurds from this region and took them to the south of Iraq, tried to empty out this region of the Barzani family in particular.
In 1983, they started to capture the 8,000 of Barzanian males and send them to Abu Ghraib prison. And there they made the groups consisted of 25% and sent them to the mass graves and kill all of them. And Saddam Hussein made a statement and speech, and he said, we killed the Barzanian people and send them to the hell.
ما چارانوس و بارزانیانت زانیب قیاده و مربوط بین که آیا و کسبر نکری کشتن مان ساق بین مچلی نتزانی.
We never knew about their destination and their fate, and people just were waiting of their members of their families.
And the people who were killed were not only Muslims but Christians as well.
When the Iraqi soldiers captured the Barzanian males at that moment, they found out some cross and some signs of their Christianity, and they said to them, I think you are not Barzani, you can go free. They said, no, our fate and our destination is the same as the Barzanian people, and we are consider ourselves as Barzani.
جلیره من بید آماجب رول امریکا بدم کروله که زور مازن بیا رنگل نک خلقه که عراق داگیر کردن بس نک مرزگار کردن.
The U.S. in our hearts and our mind are liberator. Maybe some people in Iraq call the American people, American soldiers, are invader, but we said that they are liberator. They got many significant role in Iraqi process, liberation process, and they support us.
سال 2003 که امریکا و هواپیمان تو برای عراق هات و رژیم بعث رو خوانده.
Especially in 2003, when the U.S. Army came and fall down the Saddam Hussein regime.
و که از کسی که 37 کس لمالا من کسو کارت منن.
Me, as a person, that I lost 37 members of my family.
سر رزو نوازش بوا خشکا و عسکرا و مارین زاید کوالات خوه لای لیره برو خاننا دیکتاتوره که وکی صدامت نوینم.
I have a big condolences for those families, and I do appreciate those families in the United States that their sons and daughters come here they did a great job to fight against the brutality, and they liberated Iraq.
What do you want the world to know about this, and how can we make sure that it never happens again to the Kurdish people? You live in a very dangerous neighborhood surrounded by a lot of radical regimes and terror groups. How can we make sure that this kind of atrocity is never carried out again against the people of Kurdistan?
Instead of thinking about taking revenge, we would like every countries in the world to help us to rebuild our country, to make our constructions, development of our region, and to help us to build a very good system for every different communities in the Kurdistan.
Well, I know there's an old Kurdish proverb that says, "The mountains are our only friends." You have many friends in America. I want you to know that. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Coming up, we head near Iraq's border with Iran to interview a Kurdish Peshmerga general who's helping to protect not only the Kurds, but the rest of the free world from some very dangerous forces. Stick around.
CUFI's mission is to educate and empower millions of American Christians to speak with one voice in defense of Israel and the Jewish people. There's several ways you can learn more about Israel every day through CUFI's dynamic resources. The CUFI Coffee Break is a weekly bite-sized Israel lesson delivered to your email inbox. Dive into topics like the forgotten Jewish refugees, Israel's agricultural communities called kibbutzim, and the Hamas rocket threat, with options to dig deeper each week. Every lesson can be read in under 5 minutes while you're making a cup of coffee. Plus, stay informed on all the latest news out of Israel and how it affects you by subscribing to CUFI's Daily Briefing. It's a daily news roundup of important Israel-related headlines, so you're always up to date when it comes to Israel. Follow CUFI on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram for daily content, including videos, news articles, breaking news, devotionals, fun facts, and more.
General, first, tell us about your unit. This is such an important unit that you command. You live in a very dangerous neighborhood here. We have Iran, Syria, Turkey. Tell us about your unit and why it is so important for the Kurdish people.
In general, the Peshmerga is responsible to provide security and safety for the entire population of the Kurdistan region, no matter their religion or ethnicity. There is no difference. We, as the Peshmerga, in this brigade, located in this area, are responsible to provide safety and security for this region. It is very important because it is located in the triangle border with 3 different countries: Iraq, Syria, and Turkey.
Well, ISIS, the caliphate, has been crushed, General, with the Peshmerga leading the charge on the ground to defeat them. But now there's a new threat forming here in the region, and it's the Iranian regime and those Shia militias. Talk about what a threat Iran and its proxies pose to Iraqi Kurdistan and to the Middle East.
The Iranian regime and its militias are a real serious threat to not only us, but for the entire region and the international community as well. And they should be stopped. Iran is a worldly country, yet they have dedicated all their resources to making problems in other countries, like Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen. They should be stopped at some point. They are using their influence with the Shia ideas and philosophies to take over the situation in these countries. For example, in Iraq, they formed the Shia militias. And according to the Iraqi parliament, they made them an official force inside the army. They are now an army inside the army. They announced they even formed an air force, especially for the Shia militias. They are a real danger to the future. What America is doing right now are good steps to take against them, speaking of the sanctions.
Again, Iraqi Kurdistan, you're a free, democratic, peace-loving people in the middle of a very dangerous neighborhood. Is there anything you would like to say to the world about Iraqi Kurdistan?
As you mentioned, it was an honor for us, the Peshmerga, to fight on behalf of the international community and the free world. But my message for the Americans and the entire world is that we, the Peshmerga, our fight is for freedom, for human rights, and for democracy. We are fighting all the radical forces in this region. We have a lot of common values with the West, and we are seeking their support in the future. Because, as you mentioned, we are fighting on behalf of the international community against all these radical forces in the region. Our fight is for freedom, for human rights, for democracy. We are also fighting against those radical forces that are against the coexistence that exists in our Kurdish region. It's their concept from the first day they came, from their Iranian revolution. Their goal is to lead the Islamic world. So it is either against Zionism, or against Christians, or against human rights, or against the international community. They want to lead. They want to be the main power, the main superpower of the Islamic world.
Up next, we take you to the front lines of the fight against ISIS in Iraq to learn how the Kurdish Peshmerga helped America crush the caliphate. Don't move.
Traveling to Israel, the land of the Bible, is a once-in-a-lifetime experience that will revolutionize your life. This month, we're bringing Israel to you with Kufai's new Promised Land mini-book. While you may not have had the opportunity to physically step foot in this sacred land, we want you to discover Israel for yourself in a powerful way. Kufai's Promised Land booklet will bring the Holy Land to life and transform you. And this month, it's yours with your gift of any amount. On every page, you'll visit important biblical and historical sites within Israel that will transport you to the land of the Bible. Learn the historical and present-day significance of major sites in Israel, from the Sea of Galilee to Jerusalem. See the scriptures unfold before your very eyes as you follow in the footsteps of our Redeemer. Visit www.kufai.org/promisedland and receive your copy today.
We are here with General Musa of the Peshmerga, and we are on the front lines, quite literally. This was the front line between the Peshmerga and ISIS. Battles with ISIS occurred right where I am sitting. Not only that, today it is still a front line between the Peshmerga and Iranian-sponsored Iraqi Shia militias. So we substituted ISIS for these Iranian proxies, these Shia militias, and the Peshmerga are all that's holding these barbarians back. General Musa, tell us first of all, set the scene for us during the battle against ISIS. This was literally the front line where we're sitting right now. Talk about the battles against ISIS that went on in this region.
In only 5 to 6 months, ISIS tried to take this village 14 times. Every time they were heavily attacking this village. But thankfully, every single time they tried, they failed. We defeated them every time. They left a lot of their dead bodies here in this territory. But we never let them take control of this. There are still some remains of their bodies that they left when they were defeated in this area. There was huge support from the coalition, providing airstrikes and covering air support for us. The Peshmerga. We were very grateful for this support.
When Mosul fell, that had to be just a major shock to the entire region, General. The second largest city in Iraq at the time, 2 million people to fall to ISIS. That had to set off alarm bells, I'd imagine, in Kurdistan, since Mosul is at the doorstep.
Mosul was not only a threat to the Kurdish region, but a threat to the whole world, as it was the second largest city of Iraq. And then they announced their own Islamic State in Mosul. It was announced as the capital of the Islamic State. The Caliph himself, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, was ruling from there. They got the weapons of the two entire legions of the Iraqi army, all the most developed and advanced American weapons. We were hoping to stop them with the machine guns, the most advanced machine guns we had. And they had all these tanks and Humvees and heavy machine guns. So it was really dangerous and a really tough fight for us. Sometimes they were attacking us with their most advanced weapons.
If ISIS would have succeeded, and they didn't because the Peshmerga defeated them, if they had succeeded in taking this area, where would they have gone next?
If we hadn't taken this area, that would be the cutoff between Erbil and Duhok. So it would be a real threat and dangerous for us. There was also another point that ISIS was trying to attack, because there is a historic Christian monastery on this mountain. It is 1,600 years old. They were trying to take down this monastery as well.
Now ISIS is in shambles, defeated here, but these Iraqi Shia militias. General, if you can, tell us more about the threat posed by these Iranian-sponsored, key point there, Iraqi Shia militias. The front line, you still have the front line. The front line hasn't gone away because you just have a new danger in the form of these Shia militias.
There is no difference. The only difference between ISIS and the Shia militia front lines is there is no shootings. Otherwise, we are holding the lines as before. They are now holding the ISIS lines. We were holding the ground until October 16, 2017. Then the Iranian-backed Shia militias attacked this area, and they came back to the same ISIS lines with the support of Iran. As I mentioned before, these Shia militias formed under the name of Shia militias, but they're the same as Iranian Revolutionary Guards. And as long as there is Iranian influence in Iraq, the situation will go on.
Coming up, my final thoughts on the new Middle East that is forming and why it matters to the Kurds and to you. Stick around.
Education without a moral compass is this. This too is part of education. And so we must make sure that we begin the educational process with a moral compass.
Join Holocaust survivor and historian Irving Roth on a once-in-a-lifetime remembrance tour through Poland. His story of loss, survival, and hope will bring the pages of history to life as you walk through the streets of the infamous Warsaw Ghetto, the silent barracks of Nazi death camps like the one where Irving slept, and the memorials to the heroes who risked their lives to rescue their Jewish neighbors from Hitler's evil plan. You will be inspired and challenged to put your faith into action. Take advantage of this rare opportunity to walk with and learn from Irving Roth as he takes you on a journey of his memories of life before, during, and after the Holocaust. To register for this historic trip to Poland with QAEDA and Irving Roth, go to the QAEDA website and sign up today.
And welcome back. We had an incredible experience taking you this week to Iraqi Kurdistan as I see this new Middle East taking shape with Israel and the Sunni Arab nations on one side and the radical Iran axis and Turkey on the other. I pray that the Kurds are finally able to live in peace. They've certainly earned that right, and so has Israel. As believers, we have a biblical mandate to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Psalm 122 verse 6 goes on to say that those who love Jerusalem will prosper. Folks, we've got our marching orders there from God Almighty, so let's get to work. And hey, remember, be sure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel for exclusive content that you won't see anywhere else. Until next time, God bless you, and remember, never hold your peace.